Welcome back now to our next conversation. According to a recent report by British International Investment, about 58% of businesses in emerging economies in Africa and South Asia have suffered from the impact of flooding, storms and droughts over the last year. The accelerating pace of climate emergency shows that more businesses in emerging economies are being impacted by extreme weather events. For more now, let's talk to Dr. Salisu Dahiru, Director General, National Council on Climate Change, joining us from our Abuja studio. Great to have you on the program.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning. So with what we've seen, so far with floodings in Nigeria, some say this could have been avoided. What do you think?
Yeah, to some degree, some aspects of it could have been avoided, but on a larger scale, as far as climate change is concerned, avoiding climate change at the moment is a little bit difficult for the reality of the situation. Rather, responding to it and adapting to it and helping to reduce or minimize its impact is the most ideal response globally. Because if you look at the issue of climate change, it's not just an abrupt development. It's something that took several years to build. So reversing it or halting it is really going to be a difficult deal, on the long run.
And it's over about 10 months since President Muhammadu Buhari appended his signature on the climate change bill, making it an act. What progress has been made since then?
Yeah, first of all, after the signature of that act, sometime towards the end of July this year, the president kickstarted the implementation of that act by the appointment of the DG, who will serve as the chief administrative officer of the council, and then inaugurated the council in September. And from then onwards, been a new entity that is an indication of the commitment of government to really take the bull by the horn with respect to Nigeria's response. The council began internal discussions and consultations within and among key players in the climate change discourse and development within the country. And so has prepared, together with the parent department of climate change, which is domiciled in the Federal Ministry of Environment, to put a good program of work that needs to be implemented, beginning with the Climate Change Conference of Parties, number 27, which is going to take place in Sharm el-Sheikh in the next 1 week thereabouts.
And obviously, this requires, participation from everyone to help, mitigate the impact of climate change right now. But what kind of conversations are being had, with, creating some kind of synergy, in solving the issues?
You see, first of all, in the course of these discussions with key players and these internal dialogues, we did understand that a lot of things are happening, particularly in the private sector. A lot of specific steps are taken. Some of them are even aligning their development agenda and trajectory within that of government, particularly remembering that the president, at the end of COP26 in Glasgow, became one of the few developing countries to really set a net zero agenda for the country, which is 2060. And so the government kickstarted these processes, one of which is the launching and takeoff of the energy transition plan, as well as the commencement of the process for establishing what we call the emissions trading scheme that is going to harness some of the proceeds from the several ongoing initiatives in climate change adaptation and mitigation in the country to harness additional resources for climate change development in the country. So what we've done since then was to do some kind of stock take, bearing in mind that a lot of the things that have been happening shows that we are even underreporting, because the private sector initiatives that have been ongoing for some key players, both in the oil and gas sector, as well as within NNPC and also within the food and beverages, have really indicated that they are doing a lot more than what comes to the surface. For instance, there's one of them that of all its facilities, 4 of them, 3, that is more than 75%, are now running on solar energy. And this is not well captured, and this is supposed to be input into the Nigeria's obligations under the Nationally Determined Contributions, or NDCs.
Right, and looking at energy transition for countries like Nigeria is obviously going to be an expensive venture. With the Climate Act, how is funding coming together to make this actually a reality?
In fact, that's one of the beautiful innovations that the Act has envisaged and really put in place. One of the major challenges that Nigeria has experienced in the last couple of years with respect to response to climate change has been that of the technical know-how, as well as the technology, and more importantly, the finance. So the Act put in place specific steps and programs that will ensure that these 3 challenges are addressed. One is to have a national climate change fund, which will be there as a suppository and a repository of funding and financing, both from the budget as well as from development partner contributions that will go into it, and it will be kind of shielded in such a way that it will provide continuous, readily available funding for climate change activities. In addition, the Act also empowered the Council to work in collaboration with Federal Inland Revenue Service to develop a carbon tax system for the country. And this is going to be hinged upon the fact that a carbon budget is also going to be established and developed for the country that will give emissions allowances for entities. In fact, it did not leave anything untouched. Entities or companies that have staff up to 50% are expected to report their climate change reduction actions, and therefore, based on this carbon budget, entities that are able to live or meet those obligations by keeping within the allowances that are going to be given to them will get rewarded. And if you go over these allowances, you get penalized, and there are also going to be these taxes that will go into the carbon fund. In addition, we also have opportunities as enshrined in the Act to establish a carbon market, and that carbon market would provide opportunities to earn carbon credits for a lot of the activities that individuals and entities and corporations, including government, will be doing in the area of climate change mitigation and adaptation. And this carbon credits could also feed into the climate change fund. So you could see that the issues of the climate finance is a very serious one, and it will help to ensure that majority of the interventions, both at federal, at state, and also at local government, will have some sustainable stream of funding as we progress.
And obviously, are there any risks, to this funding? Because right now we see we're not, meeting output with oil production, even though we're trying to move away from, dirty alternatives. What other risks are there to actually making sure that this funding, for energy transition is actually happens?
excuse me. I think one major factor that we need to highlight is the fact that, look, globally, every country has realized that climate change is here, and we cannot be left out in this drive. Yes, it is true that we do not emit as much carbon emissions that lead to climate change compared to developed countries, but we are bearing the brunt of climate change effects. We've seen with the massive flooding that has affected Nigeria, as well as other countries such as Pakistan, Bangladesh, and even the floods, the drought in Europe for the first time. So it is duty bound, you know, on every nation to be able to contribute its own quota. And the energy transition plan for Nigeria is one major pathway that Nigeria intends to address the twin problems of energy drought and then the issue of climate change, so that we are able to meet that 2060 target of net zero. And alongside the specific steps towards its implementation, there are absolute opportunities for climate finance to really flow into the country because developed countries are also bound by the climate change agreement, particularly those the Paris Agreement and those before it, to offset some of their carbon emissions through the financing of projects in developing countries, as well as providing support, of which a number of them have actually pledged this support. And these supports are not only just merely in cash, but some of them are in kind. And they do include capacity building and enhancement, and then upgrading and resuscitating some of the moribund, you know, industries that are high emitters or polluters, and then also providing opportunities for financial flow and technology to support developing countries. So in terms of risks, probably delay or inability of these developed countries to meet the pledges that they've already made and recorded over time, going as far back as COP15 in Copenhagen in 2009, where a minimum of $100 billion annually has been pledged. But most of these countries are really backstepping, as we used to say in Nigeria, and not meeting up their pledges. So the opportunity for Africa and other developing countries is during COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, these pledges for financial support as well as technological support will be in the front burner for the discussions.
Right. Well, I guess educating the masses also and to streamline the activities, to also try to make this an easy process, must also be conversations you're having. But thank you so much, Dr. Salisu Dahiru, DG, National Council on Climate Change. It was great having you on the program.
Thank you so very much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. All right, still ahead on Business Morning, we'll look at the impact of electioneering on business activities right here in Nigeria. That's the next conversation. Do stay with us. This is Business Morning.